to another live with yours truly. I'm so excited to talk to you today about kind of a sensitive topic, but one almost every big family mom who has more than 3 children has been out in public has encountered. When professionals criticize your big family and or your big family that happens to also homeschool. This has happened to me more times than I can count. Honestly, I've been out and about and I've had people comment. And, commenting is one thing when people simply remark and they say, oh, you have a big family, oh, wow, are these all your children? You can tell by their tone that it's simply just a passing commentary, like an observation. But I have had experiences, like I said, more than I can count, where the tone has been entirely different. And, maybe I was taking it the wrong way. Maybe I was having kind of not a great day and it was a bad moment and I was being oversensitive. But there have been times when I was not being oversensitive or overreactive or just having a bad day. And the person's tone, choice of wording, facial cues were all reading, not just a passing comment, but an open criticism. And it's one thing when it's your family and friends who are doing it, because, oh my gosh, I get unsolicited input all the time. And I've learned how to have good boundaries with friends and family and other people in my life who really overstep the bounds and just have what I like to call verbal diarrhea, like no sphincter. Just bloop, it all comes out. Can you feel the fire coming off me? I'm just like, seriously? So in my early years as a big family mom, when I started to have 3 under the age of 2 and then 4 under the age of 4, 5 under 5, oh my goodness, the comments began to come fast and furious. Like I said, I expected that from friends, from family, especially once we crossed the whole crazy bridge into homeschooling, which no one in my entire family ever on both sides has ever done. So I knew that we were shaking the cultural boat. We were, without even intending to, challenging a lot of people's presuppositions and values. And, a lot of people, it was kind of triggering their own stuff, especially, parents and close relatives who were like, what, are you criticizing me? And they get kind of defensive. There's a whole bunch of stuff going on there. But today I'm going to zoom in with one particular scenario is when it's a professional setting. So for example, I was reading about it in another mom's group, big family kind of mom's group, homeschooling with a homeschooling emphasis, one of my favorite homeschooling large families groups. And she was like, ladies, can I just vent? You've seen those posts, right? If you're in big family mom's groups, and I'm like, okay, girl, lay it on me. Because you're in a safe space when you're among peers, other big family moms who get you and totally know how that feels. So she's like, I took my daughter, I think her daughter was about 12, 13, into some kind of physiotherapy kind of setting, and they have to go for a couple of follow-up appointments. So she's at the very first appointment, she's with this younger staff member. They're kind of in the room alone, and younger staff member is chatting with her daughter, and you think, okay, that's normal. You're just being friendly and human and talking to my daughter and be like, oh, so like, do you have any brothers or sisters? And she's like, yeah, and I guess they had like 7. She was one of 7, and she's like, and I'm reenacting the scene because I've been in these scenes like this. I kind of like taking her story, but how I've experienced it in my own settings. They're like, you have what? How many? What? And the professional, this physiotherapist or what have you, just was like, stopped what she was doing to focus in not on mom, but on daughter, 12-year-old daughter, mind you, and just started to like in incredulity. Like she was just like, like, what? You're what? Are you the oldest? What? Like, well, you must get a break when you go to school, right? Like, and she's like, well, no, well, we homeschool, right? 12-year-old daughter. This may or may not have been her first time being almost interrogated as a big family sibling, big family child. And mom is right there. And then mom is starting to read the temperature of the room and be like, and then you're just like watching it all happen almost in slow motion as a professional in a professional setting is coming at you, or in this case, coming at your child and virtually interrogating them. And I think partially they're just absolutely like morbidly curious, fascinated, because it is a more rare thing in today's Western culture to meet anybody who's willingly has more than 3 children. And especially when they have like more than a handful of children or more than a minivan full of children. Yeah, I get it. We're, flying unicorns kind of thing, right? So there's a fascination, but the tone, the voice can suddenly feel like you're being interrogated. You're back against the wall and you're like, listen, lady, I'm just here to like get my groceries. I'm just here to get my appointment done, right? I'm like, you're a human, I'm a human. Sure, I'll answer a couple of questions, but could we just like focus and get the job done? And could you kind of stop interrogating me and my children? Because these are really private questions you're asking, and I don't really care for your tone of voice. And what are you implying? Right? This is all my mental train of thought. And this was the mom's mental train of thought too. It all happened so fast. And then the professional said, well, you're the oldest of 7 and you homeschool? Oh my God. Oh my God. Like all the OMGs, right? That's so crazy. That's crazy. Like, how do you stand it? And that's when mom, and I know I would have been like, giving her the look, the like, can you read my face look? Well, mom and the big family mom group, this other homeschooling group, was venting because she was just like, I froze. And then I hated myself after it because I said nothing. I wanted to vomit. I wanted to scream. I wanted to like take my daughter and run. But we have to come back to like, because they have like a number of other follow-up appointments. So you're like, this isn't just a one-off standing at the grocery store line or something. It's a professional setting in a professional clinic. And I feel stuck and I feel trapped and I feel shamed and I feel angry because my daughter has now been involved in this and she just got barfed on by this other person's stuff. And oh my gosh, so mom is having to deal with all of her stuff, right? All of her emotions are flaring. And she just gets through the appointment. A couple more comments were made throughout the appointment, gets in the car, goes home. And then later comes to the mom's group to just pour it all out in vent. So she got like 100 comments later, a lot of like love and support and a variety of opinions of how other people would have handled it. And a lot of commiseration of like, girl, I totally know how that feels. I have some comments on it too. Not only like I commented in the group, but I wanted to share it in my big family moms group because I know how that feels. And I know it can be challenging because there's a time to be silent. There's also a time to speak up. And I'm not saying, oh, here's how you know when. It's really a personal judgment call. And I can completely understand choosing the road of silence when your anger is flaring and you're like, if I speak right now, what comes out next ain't going to be Jesus. It's not going to be pretty, right? But there's also a mama bear that can come up when your kids are involved, like in this particular scenario laid out, when it's just like you want to almost get in between you and the other person, this professional, and be like, stop, right? Boundaries. Do your job and leave it at that, okay? Right? Because this woman, God knows what was going through her mind, right? She's young, apparently in her 20s. Like I said, she's just been a flying unicorn. She's really curious, but she also didn't seem to have too much of a like verbal sphincter to be able to kind of hold it back and recognize time and place, lady. We're in a professional setting. And I have a professional expectation. And I get it when people ask me questions about my family, when they're happen to be like a doctor or some other kind of, you're in a clinic or whatever. However, I do expect them to act like professionals. And most of the time, I've had positive experiences where people just be like, oh, you have an extraordinary number of children. Wow, that's interesting. And I can almost see the look on their face. They'd say more if it was polite to do so, but it would be so professionally inappropriate. So without getting too much into this particular case scenario, what I think she should have done, because she handled it how she handled it. I've handled my scenarios when I've been like, later, I was like, I should have said something. I should have, and I think of a zinger later. I'm like, do I really want to zing people in public because they're just being like ignorant, poor mannered, no verbal sphincter or whatever. And I'm not going to necessarily tell you just exactly when and how you should talk. Because like I said, I believe it's a personal judgment call. There have been times when I've spoken up and been like, I'm actually kind of uncomfortable with this conversation. Could we just, do what we're here for? And as soon as they realize me being like, they're like, oh, yes, of course. And they just, oops, little flush of color to their cheeks as they realize we're not two strangers right now. We're in a professional capacity and I expect you to be professional. You're expecting me to just like pay you when we're done. So let's just do that, shall we? So I have spoken up, but in the early years, I froze. I just froze. And that was kind of my own stuff, kind of my own fear response, my default mechanism of how I'd handle overwhelming situations. So I had definitely grown in grace and confidence and stature. Plus I'm 6 feet tall, but you don't have to be 6 feet tall to have a 6 foot tall spirit and say, excuse me, I'd prefer that we not talk about my private family issues right now. Could we please just do what we're here to do? And they're like, oh yes, right. Thank you. Very gracious reminder of like basically zip it. Let's get to work. However, there's been times when I haven't said anything and it kept me up at night, like this dear woman who was venting. And she's like, and I have to go back gosh, what? And then you know how it's going to be of dreading and fearing. Oh my gosh, what if I get her? What if I always have to see, little miss talks too much? And like all that anxiety and stress that it can produce in you as a mom and even in your daughter in this scenario, right? Your child. Okay. That's an indicator that it's time to take some proactive action. So here's what I recommend. If you find yourself in this kind of professional rock and a hard place situation, you have to go back and you're like, I'm not just going to change doctors or change. That's what sometimes an option. You're like, these are terrible people. They have horrible customer service skills. I'm out. That's an option. But if you are going to go back, I would recommend that if you didn't speak up in the moment, that's fine. It's cool. Use your call. And if you were just like shutting down because it was just too much, that's okay. I get it. Once you've gone home and calmed down, maybe vented a little bit with your husband, with your friends, and now you've kind of calmed down and said, okay, where am I going to set my boundaries in this professional setting? I would recommend at that point making a friendly phone call to the office. You could write a letter. It's your call. I personally find phone calls more effective because then they get tone. They get the warmth of my tone, but they also get the seriousness in my tone. And letters, you know how it is when something's typed or text or written out. It can come across like cold sometimes, especially if you're still processing feelings. I get it. So if you do choose to go the route of calling, in this case, I would just use it as a professional coaching opportunity, which I have done. And I find very cathartic. I find it very healing to stand up for what is good and true and right and give a friendly piece of feedback and input, because most clinics, most professionals are running a business and they're well aware of it. Management knows at the end of the day, this isn't good if they get a bad Google review or if they get, bad feedback or people, you're more likely to tell 9 other people statistically about a bad customer experience than you are about a positive one. So they're highly motivated, most professionals who take their jobs and their businesses seriously, to provide a good customer experiences for all of their clients, regardless of their backgrounds. If you think about it from a discriminatory point of view, not that I try to play the victim card. I'm really cautious about, overplaying that in today's day and age. But if you really feel that this was a professional overstep, then tell them about it. Call them up in a couple days once you've cooled off and let them know. Here's what happened. I felt very uncomfortable. I felt that it was inappropriate of your staff member, and I would really appreciate you doing a little bit of, how should we say it? Some coaching on appropriate boundaries, on appropriate ways to speak to clients in the clinic, in the office setting, because we're not two people at the park. We're not talking to each other like normal. I'm kind of trapped, and I felt really trapped. And I would appreciate it if you would either just simply, keep your questions very neutral. And if you happen to think, oh my God, that's crazy about a client's life or lifestyle or quite frankly, personal choices, to know when to keep it to yourself. And because you're, in this case, this 20-something-year-old staff member is representing not herself, right? She's representing her business and the business owner. We own two businesses. So I know what it's like to represent our businesses. My husband is a local handyman, and everything from how he dresses to how he keeps the vehicle to how he, chooses to brush his teeth and groom his beard is, professional, because he's providing a professional service. So it's important. So I wanted to share that with you today, because if you're feeling like, oh my gosh, I just had a really unpleasant professional experience and I have to go back, how do I handle this? Ultimately, it's up to you, but just know, girl, you're not alone. A lot of us big family moms experience that, and it can be overwhelming. It can be just like anger producing, and understandably, because that's your clue, right? Like lights going off the dashboard, boundaries have just been breached. And I try to be generous and understand that most people, what you can't ascribe to ignorance, I would then ascribe to malice. And I think in this case, most often or not, people are just ignorant. They're not listening to what they're saying, even though you're like, do you hear what you're saying right now? So if it's a professional, you have some tools in your tool belt. And in the moment, it may not be wise, to keep your Christian virtue to say something quite at that moment, though you're certainly free to. If you're like, this is over the line, please stop. I'd prefer if we not talk about my private family, especially with my child here. Could we just, carry on with the appointment? And at that point, they're usually like, oh, yeah, you're right. But if in the moment it's too much, you can always follow up later with management. Not that you're being some kind of witchy Karen or anything, but that's just standing up and letting them know if this happened, I would appreciate you addressing it in a professional manner, because we're all professionals here, right? We can all act with dignity and give them valuable feedback, an opportunity to course correct, give some coaching, and then you don't feel trapped and high stress going to the next appointment. And think about your child in this scenario, right? With a daughter who's like, Mom, I don't want to be talked to like that. I don't want to be treated like, because 12-year-olds, I don't expect the average 12-year-old to have the emotional maturity range to be able to handle that kind of a situation. That's where I would step in and say, hey, I can handle that and I will handle it well. And I can even tell my daughter about it after, honey, I didn't enjoy that either. That was really unpleasant. And I'm sorry you had to go through that. Here's how I'm going to handle it as a Christian, as a mom, just as a human being. And then, right? You don't feel like you just had to take it and get walked all over. And you got to model to your child a gracious way of dealing with, like, quite frankly, with conflict resolution, because that's a conflict that you're just going to walk into again, or you could. So those are some of my thoughts. I feel like cathartic having gotten it off my chest, like I'm talking to the woman in case in point. Although I did share with her like a super long, high value answer. I was like, I hope this helps you. I'm so sorry, but I want to share it with you. So if this is resonating with you, like, oh my goodness, thank you, Tara Bello, big family mom with 3+ children, got 11. I would totally love to have more support, because yeah, you get what I'm going through, and I'd love to have some more support, some more encouragement in this area of big family mom life. Everything from how to like stay on top of the home and the laundry to how to handle those high pressure confrontational situations with friends, with family, with professionals, because it happens. It happens. We are, what did I say again? Winged unicorns in this world, in our culture right now. It's just stats. It's the reality where we're at as a culture. So if you'd like some more support, feel free to jump into my Big Family Moms group, where we go from struggling with big family mom struggles to growing in grace together. So the link is in the description of today's video. Love to connect with you there. So that's what I've got on my heart to share with you today. I know it has been a journey for me. Like I said, in the early years, overwhelmed. But now, can you feel it coming off me? I feel more confident. Even now, I'm sitting up taller. And I don't find those situations as intimidating. In fact, they actually don't even hardly happen anymore. And maybe it's because I just give off a like, no kind of vibe. I've really grown in who I am as a big family mom, in my identity in Christ, and my confidence of embracing children as a blessing. And it's not just being a human doormat for other people when they're either just have very maybe not well-refined manners, social manners, or worse. And it has made my life a lot less high stress, because yeah, going out in public with any number of my children in the past used to be almost something where I would just like grit my teeth, even going to the park. I'm like, wait for it, wait for it, wait for it. And now I don't. I just go about my life with confidence and grace and dignity, because I know whose I am. I know why I'm welcoming these children. And I don't actually have to explain myself to anybody, because God knows, my husband knows. And that's quite frankly where the conversation only needs to really be had. But when I do choose to share with others, I want to be able to do it with poise, with dignity, with class, and sometimes where necessary, with a little edge of there are the boundaries, period. So that's it. That's what's on my heart to share with you today. I will connect with you in the group. Otherwise, God bless you. Here's one of my children putting his hand on the screen. You like to look at yourself? Well, you're live, buddy. People are seeing your face and your teeth. All right. You want to say bye? Bye. All right.